blows me away every time I see that. That's only my second time seeing the finished product. Just a special thanks to Greg Jeschke and Jason Weiss, and to all the folks who helped this to happen. I got to take a moment just to sort of compose myself. When I think that I'm the descendant of such strength, and it's taken me so long to understand that that's who I am. It makes the rest of my life a little easier, understanding the stock that I come from, and that I've been playing a little too safe in these waters. And like I said there, if it makes people angry or uncomfortable when I call out injustice and systemic racism, so be it. But for the sake of those who are sold, beaten, raped, and stolen from me, I owe it to them and their legacy to use my voice. We have a special guest this evening who is going to be moderating our panel, and I'm really, really excited about this. It's Angela Robinson. Angela is a native of Jacksonville, Florida. She's best known as the Ice Queen, Veronica Hampton, of Tyler Perry's The Haves and Have-Nots, for the work of Veronica, and she is one dangerous lady. She is the 2015 recipient of the Gracie Award for the Best Female Actress. She's worked on Broadway, off-Broadway, stages throughout the U.S. and abroad. In Broadway productions, her appearances include The Color Purple. She played Shug Avery to Fantasia's Miss Celie, Wonderful Town, Bells Are Ringing, and Play On. She's participated in national tours of Color Purple, Dreamgirls, The Wizard of Oz with Eartha Kitt, not to mention having appeared on Law and Order, SVU, and Another Bed, and other commercials. She's also the winner of the Independent Reviewers of New England Award for her work as Shug Avery in Color Purple. She is a member of the Tony Award-winning Broadway Inspirational Voices. In 2008, she and her husband, Scott Whitehurst, formed the White Robin Group, and it's a consulting group aspiring and for firm for aspiring and seasoned artists, providing training, inspiration, and direction through acting workshops, private acting, coaching, blogs, and mentorship programs. She's a graduate of Florida A&M with a BA, where she received her BA. She's also a graduate of the William Asper Acting School, where she studied with master teacher William Asper. And then there's so many things else that she's done. She currently resides in New Jersey with her husband, Scott Whitehurst, and their son, Robbie. I've had a chance to meet her and get to know her because her pastor is a personal friend of mine, one of my best friends. And so I consider Angela and her husband, Scott, friends. I've not met my nephew, Robbie, yet. I need to do that. And but more importantly than all of these accolades, I consider her a friend. And she was the first and only person I reached out to outside of our community to moderate tonight's discussion, because I just felt that she would bring some real heart and soul to it. So so for the room of those here to see Justified Journey, can you please help me give a warm welcome to Miss Angela Robinson?
Hello, everyone. Hello. And I know that you enjoyed that as much as I did. Dr. G, wow. You don't hear the applause. You can't see the applause, but we are applauding you. It was a powerful, powerful documentary. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Some of you were enlightened, some were inspired to seek out your own family lines, your own family trees. Some of you were frankly surprised, I'm sure, by a lot of what was revealed here tonight. So we're going to give you a chance to ask some questions. We have a list of questions here, and hopefully we will have one that you've had on your heart. I see that you guys also have questions in the question and answer section, and Dr. G will take a look at those and try to answer them as well. But we're going to just get down to it. I want to reintroduce you to your panelists. We have Greg Jeschke coming back with us. We have Dr. Clark-Pujara back with us. We have Mr. Harkins, and of course, Dr. G. So welcome back, everyone.
Thank you.
And we would like it if you keep your answers to 2 minutes.
Why you look at me when you said that?
I know that may be asking a lot, but we would like it if you could keep your answers to 2 minutes so that we can finish at the time that Dr. G said we were going to finish. So here we go. To Mr. Jeschke, what has been the personal impact on you telling the story? What is its relevance for white people given the current climate, in your opinion?
Well, personally, Angela, I have to say this experience was my first time producing a documentary with a non-narrative form, and I know that isn't exactly the deep answer that that people might have expected, but it was hugely deep for me because I felt the responsibility to obviously create a program that would be understandable to viewers, but I at the same time had this great responsibility to Alex, who entrusted me with his story, because we should probably sort of let everybody know that obviously this is Alex's story and you hear from him throughout the entirety of it, but he had nothing to do with what actually showed up in that 40 minutes. And you would have to answer to how big of a trust factor that was, Alex. So I appreciate it. So personally for me, Angela, it means a lot, and this experience always will be. To the broader question, though, I really just think that it's another example of what our American history really is about. It's something I think. Personally, I think the more people understand the context of everything that's going on, and that would be the history, the more they're going to be able to come to terms with the fact that things do need to change. And just because it didn't happen to them and their family, and I speak coming from Wisconsin, which is a predominantly white state, and that I think folks have a lot of trouble often making the connection because they don't know someone who is African American. They've never met one, let alone know them. So to me, this is a great opportunity to hopefully allow Alex to get his message across, but also for people to sort of understand who hadn't heard this before, that wow, this is an example of what American history is, and it's not something we necessarily learned in school. Probably didn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. Dr. G, now you see how actors feel. We do the work and then we don't know how it's gonna turn out.
That's scary. That's scary.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But in this case, it turned out very well.
Yes, I'm very pleased.
Turned out great. Our next question is to Dr. Clark-Pujara. Many white Americans struggle with the term systemic racism. Please explain the systemic implications of slavery and capitalism on Black economics, education, politics, and families.
That is a really tall order for 2 minutes, but I'm going to do my best.
You can take 4.
Literally dozens of books that talk about this, but I want to give some concrete examples, because I think for a lot of people, the term systemic racism seems just like a liberal buzz phrase, and it's not grounded in anything real, but it most definitely is. So systemic racism refers to racism built into systems and institutions, not individual acts of racism. For example, race-based slavery was created in this country in the colonial period and then adopted into the nation. And what do I mean created? We can literally go to the colonial laws and follow how and why race-based slavery was created. There was nothing normal or natural about it. It was a completely artificial project that was began to serve capitalism. So if you go to the most populous and wealthiest colony, if we were to get in a time machine and go back to the 17th century, we would find ourselves in Virginia. And you see a series of laws in Virginia as people begin to live longer. It became more advantageous to own someone for a lifetime, rather it did than to own them for 7 years, which was typical. So most forced laborers in the North American colonies start out as white indentured servants, but then these spaces become committed to race-based slavery and enslaving people of African descent for entire lifetimes, right? And so that's a complicated process in and of itself, but I just want to give you some examples of some of the laws that create race-based slavery. 1669, English colony passes a law, this is Virginia, that says you inherit the status of your mother. That's really weird. In an English patriarchal society, you inherit the status of your father. So what this means is if your mother is enslaved, then you're enslaved. If your mother is free, then you're free. Then a few years later, they pass another law that say the only people who can be slaveholders are white people. Indigenous people, so Native people, and Black people can't hold people in bondage. Before that, a few had. So they make a law making slaveholding a purview of whiteness. And then you get laws that criminalize sex, but they only do it one way. They criminalize sex between white women and Black men, but not between Black women and white men. So white men who rape and have children with Black women own their own children. White women who have children with Black men, if they're already indentured, their indentures are extended. If they were free white women, they were indentured as punishment. And any Black who married any white, no matter what way you go, would be banished from the colony. So race-based slavery wasn't natural, wasn't inevitable, but was a system that was created. And we can go back to colonial law, whether it be in Massachusetts or Rhode Island or New York or South Carolina or Virginia, and see the creation of it. So it's built into a system, right? And that's adopted by the US government. And all we have to do is look at our founding document, the Constitution, which is a freedom document, but also a pro-slavery document. And that's not my opinion, that's just a statement of fact. This is a document that identifies Black people as 3/5 of a person. It doesn't say Black people, it doesn't say slavery, it doesn't say slave, these were smart men. They refer to the institution, they say free people, bound people, and all other people. All those other people are people that are held in lifelong bondage, right? So they're 3/5 of a person. And that in and of itself is offensive, but what the 3/5 clause was really about was political power. So in states that had 30, 40% of their population enslaved, counting enslaved people at 3/5 of a person meant that they could have more representation in the Senate and in the House, because the number of representatives that a state was allotted was based on total population. So that's why they lobby for it. You get a fugitive slave law that says that if you're an enslaved person anywhere in the United States and you run away to a state that doesn't acknowledge slavery, you're still an enslaved person, and that state has an obligation to return you, right? And then you get the slave trade law that says there can be no discussion of ending America's participation in the slave trade until 1808, so 20 years of unfettered access. 1790, you get your very first immigration law, and that law says in order to become a naturalized citizen of the United States, you must be a free white person. That is not repealed into 1952. So that kind of racism is baked within the very core of the nation. It's not a liberal brush-phrase. It refers to something that's real and tangible. And all white people benefit from race-based slavery. The vast majority of white people never owned a person, never could dream of owning another person. This was the purview of the elite. But slavery built the country, and I mean that literally. The streets of New York and New York, and Newport, Rhode Island were paved with the duties paid on enslaved people. All of those European immigrants who are coming to work in the United States and get a piece of the American dream are coming to a country that was literally and figuratively built on the backs of Black people. And you can just take an example of the Industrial Revolution. You have millions of European immigrants pouring into the northern colony, into the northern states to work in mills or factories that are making farming implements. These textile mills are fueled by slave labor. That cotton doesn't fall from the sky, it comes from the American South. The expansion of free white labor in this country was directly connected to the expansion of slave labor in the South. Before it was the New York Stock Exchange, it was just simply called the Cotton Exchange. The now infamous Lehman Brothers begin their lives as cotton brokers. By the time we get to the middle of the 19th century, the labor of enslaved Black people is going to make the United States wealthy and powerful. Cotton accounted for 58% of all US exports. It was the economy. The longshoremen in New York, in Boston, in Philadelphia were shipping cotton, right? That it was the center of the economy. So I think sometimes people think it's about, well, my family never owned slaves, but that's not the point. The point is the entire country's economy
Yes.
tied to the labor of enslaved Black people. The street that you walked down to set up your shop on was built on the duties paid on enslaved people. This was a system built on slave labor. And that's a very uncomfortable truth for a lot of Americans. It's not about individual acts, right? So individual acts added up to this. And then in the 20th century, this kind of thing continues with redlining, right? Which is how most Americans enter the middle classes, through home ownership. That's not made available to Black people. The vast majority of the mortgages that are backed by the US government go to white families, and the fact that you were Black could exclude you alone, not your income, not your credit history, just the fact that you were Black. And that allows for the building of generational wealth. So systemic racism is about who has access to opportunity, who is protected politically and socially by the haves, who owns the banks, who makes the laws, who adjudicates those laws. That's systemic racism.
I don't think we should have limited her at all, Dr. G.
Not at all.
You take as much time as you need, Dr. Clark-Pujara. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Harkins, are you there? We see you. We would like to know, how did you feel discovering that you descended from a slave owner? And how has this challenged the way you see and understand America?
We're having some technical difficulties, so I'm just trying to get folks to see if they can try to unmute John. They're trying.
Okay, you want us to move on and then come back to that question, or would you like us to wait?
Hey, cousin John, there you go. There you go.
Hey, cousin John.
Okay. Yes.
So did you hear the question, or would you like for me to repeat?
I did.
Okay.
No, I'm big into and genealogy, as is Alex, and I think I'm more typical of Southerners in that I've got 8 great-grandparents, and this is the only one that comes from a slaveholding family. I had heard the stories that that was our legacy, that there was the family silver that was hid in the weld during the Civil War. But it's just a full appreciation for me of the complete range of backgrounds that we have. I was a history teacher before I came back to the flower business. And it was quite a chore teaching white Southern kids. They couldn't believe that I went on beyond 1863, because that was in fact when Vicksburg fell. That's where I was teaching, and they could not imagine me wanting to talk about what came after. When I gave them 1 week coverage of the Civil War, that was just outrageous. But at least I took them a small baby step forward.
I'm so grateful for you, grateful to you for doing that. How has this challenged the way that you see and understand America, or has it?
Really hasn't challenged it. I've been a yellow dog Democrat since I was a senior in high school. So I am atypical for most people my age or from my background.
Yes.
I'm one of 26 grandchildren of the G woman, and there are only 2 of us that, as I would say, have seen the light. The other 24 are still on the other side and just don't even want to consider what's going on. but I keep throwing it in their faces. We've got G Family grouping on Facebook, and I'm up 1 to 2 times a week and just needling away. My favorite now is to use quotes from the Bible, because that's, what they are living by. And my last one was 2 Corinthians 5:10, which reminds us that we're all going to be judged before Jesus Christ as to all things we've done, whether good or bad. I have not had a peep, but that's not going to stop me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for continuing to throw it in their faces. The next question is for you, Dr. G. What do you want America to know and do after viewing this film?
I want America to know that this is truly a part of our history. And when we don't teach it to all of our residents, there are some who believe that they're better than others. When you take a look at the opportunities that have been afforded other groups of people through some of the acts that came through the civil rights work, including that for white women. You look at the Immigration Act of 1965, that the work of Black folks even opened the door for folks to come from Asia and to bring wealth and to reunite their families who have been working here and not allowed to bring family members over. We've helped to open doors for so many people, yet we're pitted against other ethnic minorities or told that we are lazy or inconsistent, don't care for our families. I want America to understand we built the liberties that America enjoys. And I want America to work to dismantle this. And if the anti-racism work does not look at power and resources, then it is not anti-racism work. What I want America to do is understand that we have systematically ignored these truths, and we've allowed people to believe that something's been taken from them. I mean, for example, when I was meeting with John, eating some great Southern Creole cuisine, we were so busy talking that we didn't realize that the situation in Charlottesville was going on. My assistant said, "Pastor, you need to listen to this." And so while we're talking about how the G's became Black, there were men marching in Charlottesville chanting blood and soil, thinking that 50 years of civil rights had ripped their rights away from them, but yet 400 years of slavery and brutality and rape had nothing to do with their reality. So the irony that we were reconciling things about our family between Blacks and whites and the ownership of Blacks, and these white men were talking about this country being told from them, makes me realize we have let generation after generation after generation believe a lie. And I also want America to know that the reason why we have not fixed this problem is because we have not properly diagnosed it. We quickly moved to the prognosis status without properly diagnosing it. As Dr. Clark-Pujara so eloquently stated, this is how America was built. 58% of the economy was cotton. We didn't even talk about sugar. She didn't even get into her grandstanding about molasses and rum. And so when you think about how a country as young as America becomes a super world power, when you look at the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire, they took centuries. And for us just to come up as quickly as we did, it was because of the way we treated people. I want America to understand that our wealth has been stolen from its own land, from its own people, from genocide to rape to brutality. And we need to understand that if we're going to build a truly equitable society. I don't want to talk about diversity days. I don't want to talk about capitalizing to being Black. I want us to talk about how we're going to dismantle these systems and make things right. And we can't do that with all white male think tanks, organizations, foundations, universities, churches, police departments. We need an overhaul and a remake.
Wow. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. G. Mr. Harkins, I'm so moved by you, Dr. G. It's hard to move on. Thank you. Mr. Harkins, how have others in your family responded to this information, this documentary? Now, you just answered that question by telling us about your group that you speak to. Did you have another answer you wanted to share?
The most heartwarming thing about the documentary, when I saw the finished product, was seeing my white cousins up in Conway appear. And that was just a real revelation to me that, you know, there has been an understanding between white and black G's. I think we're atypical to the South. It's just great to see Marianne and James greet Alex as they did.
Yeah, I loved seeing that as well. This question is for Dr. G and for you, Mr. Harkins. You're descendants of two brothers. What do you suppose they would think of this reunion?
I think they would be quite pleased. I mean, if we haven't had time to go into the whole story of the G. Gamble murder, but through a guy who is writing a new book on the murder, we learned that the two brothers, R.L. and Henderson, were riding around the county trying to solve the murder. They knew that the black man who was chained to the tree and burned alive was not the true perpetrator. And so this guy who's writing the new book is the great-grandson of the trial attorney who got the white man who really was responsible an innocent verdict. So now, after 120 years, finally the truth is going to come out. So I think there was a close bond between Henderson and R.L.
I I feel a sense of redemption, Miss Robinson. After walking through that house, we called it a house, but James said it was the plantation. That's where it went down. That and we also know from the census records that Henderson lived next door to his father, Reuben. And so we know just like right where it took place. And I have to say, I'm an intuitive, somewhat sensitive person. It took me months to shake the vibe of having walked through the halls of that plantation. I mean, we had to step through snakes and spiders and hornets' nests, but and I don't like any of those things. But I made it a point. I felt like I couldn't go to Mississippi and not stand where they stood as a sign of solidarity. And so I feel that what Henderson would feel about our interaction is that he would say, "Boy, look in the windows I couldn't look in, go into places I couldn't go, say things to your white relatives that I couldn't say and live. Tell the story that we fought and that we were smart and that we were brilliant, that his great-great-grandchildren had names like Socrates and Aristotle and Plato." And systemic racism tried to squelch out all of that intelligence and erase their beauty and their strength. And I think what would really please Henderson is that even though in many ways, when John and I sat down to meet in his home, his daughter, Meg, who I've become friends with, we call each other cousin because we are, and she and Lexi, my daughter, have appeared on my podcast. As we're there, we realized that even though they both could be in grad school at the same time, our white relatives still have 150, 160 year head start on us because of what we know about Reconstruction and Jim Crow. So that's still a reality. But I feel that Henderson would appreciate the fact that his lineage running in me, his blood in me, would allow me to be able to look my white relatives and white Mississippians in the eye and understanding that who I am. I am a child of Henderson G. And I feel that he would be very, very proud that I've not dropped my head or have acted in a way that was unseemingly or embarrassing to the name. But I feel that he would be proud that I would know how to hold up the dark side of the G, the black side, the brown side, the black is beautiful side of the G family in a way that's very honoring.
That's beautiful. We are going back now to Dr. Clark-Pujara. Why do you think America denies systemic racism? You're muted, doctor.
Okay, again, one of these really big questions. Dr.
You get
G,
4 minutes.
Reverend G
You get
is,
4. Come on.
he's famous for asking me to, explain really complicated things in like 2 minutes. But it's a good intellectual exercise for me, so it's good. Before I get started, I just want to say how much I enjoyed the documentary, and thank you for the invitation to help contextualize some of this. I think the big question, the big answer is, it's a question of history. The K through 12 history curriculum is designed to make you unquestioningly proud of America. It's designed as this forward progressing, things always get better. We may have had some problems, but we fixed them all, and the problems weren't really that big, and they weren't really that bad, right? And it does a disservice to the country at large. I have a 4 and 8-year-old. They understand complication. They understand that people aren't wholly good or wholly bad, and they can understand that a nation wasn't wholly good or wholly bad. That our history is a complicated one. It's a history rooted in genocide, a history of indigenous peoples' resistance to that genocide, a story that we don't want to tell. And before you can understand how racism becomes, how race-based slavery, as it refers to Black people, becomes entrenched, you first have to tell the story of forced removal and genocide of indigenous people. And these are very uncomfortable topics for most people, which is why we gloss over them, which is why we tell a ridiculous Thanksgiving fairy tale, right? So we can reckon with our past and it not keep us up at night and not make us think about, why is COVID-19 running rampant on Native American land right now, the little bit they were able to keep, right? And so it allows us to believe a bootstrap fairy tale of, if you just work really hard, you can be successful. That was true for some people at some time, and it was largely tied to skin color. It's the reason why you hear people say really ignorant things like, well, my ancestors immigrated the right way. The right way just used to mean being white. Like, it didn't mean that you had any qualifications, that you paid any fees, that you filled out any paperwork, that you waited in any queue. It just meant that you were white. And that was the ticket in, right? A real reckoning with our history means that we understand that Black people never accepted their bondage, that slavery was a constant battle, and anybody who has spent more than 2 minutes looking at any records of slavery in the archive, reading diaries and letters and plantation books and manuals, know that they are just a litany of complaints of all of the things that Black people did to resist their bondage. That slavery oppressed Black people, but it did not break Black people. Broken people don't create culture. Broken people don't keep their families intact when they're being torn apart. Those are not actions of broken people. So a history that really reflects the truth is a history that calls into question basic assumptions about what it means to be American, meaning if you just work really hard, you'll be successful. That has never been true. And it's a myth that allows people to think that the things that they have came from hard work alone. And I want to be really clear about this. There are many white immigrants that worked really hard, and that resulted in success. But it resulted in success because the system privileged whiteness, because there were just as many non-white folks who worked really, really hard, and that resulted in poverty and marginalization. So it's not about working hard, it's about access to opportunity, social opportunity, economic opportunity, political opportunity. And if we really grapple with our history and deal with the systemic racism that our history is full of, it's going to require restitution. And it isn't a conversation that most Americans are even willing to have, because most of them don't even understand the simple history.
Amen, sister.
She just dropped the mic.
Yeah, yes. This question is for everyone, so whoever wants to chime in. just bouncing off of what Dr. Clark-Pujara just said, what is the power and benefit of denying systemic racism?
Can we let Dr. Clark-Pujara keep going?
I mean, I think the power of it is you don't have to re-examine why you have the things you have. You don't have to think about if your parents had money to pay for college or help you start a business or pay for your wedding or pay for your down payment. It allows you to unquestionably believe that you have everything you have just because you earned it. And that other people don't have things because they're lazy and inadequate and they don't know how to save and they don't have a good sense of thrift and work ethic. It allows you to be arrogant. It allows you to lack empathy. It allows you to sleep really good at night because some people have things because they work hard and other people don't have things because they're lazy, right? It doesn't make you question yourself in any real or sustained way. It's easy.
And I would add to that, Ms. Robinson, that I love everything that Dr. Clark-Pujara is saying, but it also means that there's no culpability or accountability. It means that you can become a world superpower by raping and beating and stealing, all the things that we've talked about, and then there's no accountability and there's no justice. So if we deny it, what do you mean we need to dismantle? This is America. We're just all American. We all have the same opportunities. Look it out. You have a degree. Your wife has a degree. Your daughter has a degree. Your mother has a degree. And it means that we don't have to look back and understand all the atrocities that happened as the norm in this country, as the norm. And I come from a patriotic family, and I love being a part of this family. But part of my work is calling out wrong when it happens. And we're a very brutal nation, and we're so quick to call out brutality in other places. And so when we talk about these realities of systemic racism and supremacy being these intangible realities, that means we have to do nothing. So we'll have a diversity day and we'll let you celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. and we'll do these fluffy things, but none of it really, not only does it not return the economics, it does not even allow you to participate in them. I mean, how is it that I, as an African-American man, can stand in front of an all-white, predominantly white funding organization and say that the problem in Black America largely rests in the thought process or the lack thereof of folks like you? Who then wants to give you that money to talk about that? People want to give resources to go and babysit Black people and fix Black problems. But part of my work is helping white people to come to grips with this is how wealth was developed. And if we deny it, it just plays into the facade. I mean, I learned a lot from Dr. Clark-Pujara because she's been teaching in our History for a New Day project for about 4 years. But she talked about people in Rhode Island who didn't own slaves. But because it became a system, if you worked for the rail to move product, if you worked for the shipping yard or ships to move product, then you needed an insurance company to insure the goods, and then you needed the banks to carry it. Who wanted slavery to go away? Because the banks would go away, the shipping yards would go away, the trains would go away, the produce would go away, the merchandise would go away. And so we deny it so that we can continue to live this good life for those who have systemically been able to say, because I'm white, I have this ability. And so the benefit is also its cost. Dr. Pujara does a lecture that is just phenomenal. It's called The Cost of Apathy, and what it has cost us and will continue to cost us. And in fact, some of what we see happening around this country and the world is related to the cost of apathy. If we're going to talk about the benefit of it, and on another discussion, we've got to talk about the cost. This is costing America a lot. We can't continue to afford these systems that we put together.
Yeah.
And that's what I would throw out to white Americans. You know, look, we've come so far as a society with all our technology and our Zooming and our videos and our documentaries and everything that we're able to do. And then you see what's happening in Minneapolis or in Madison. And I guess I just wonder, is this the world you want to live in? Even though you've got your house and you've got your kids in college, do you feel good about the fact that you're okay, and you know, a block away or 5 blocks away, it's all hitting the fan and coming down again? Does that make you feel good? I just, you know, we're better than that. We've got all the technology. Let's bring in some humanity as our next project. You know, everybody's so into finding out the latest stuff on the iPhone. How about putting that down, or how about using the iPhone and finding out a little bit about the history you don't know? The stuff that we're talking about that I know for so many folks is just here we're talking about it again, but for too many people, they don't listen, or they haven't heard from the very beginning. And it's an empty Etch-a-Sketch, I guess, is the whole problem there. And you know, you need to pick up other aspects of your life. And just because everything might be going for you great on, you know, at 122 Easy Street, doesn't necessarily mean this is the world that your kids are going to inherit, because you're leaving them in a world of hurt when you leave the world hurting as much as it is right now. You know, the people who don't feel it are going to feel it, I think, is kind of what this is, what we're starting to push to more and more. And maybe that's got people afraid, and maybe that's part of the backlash and whatnot. I don't know, but I just have a real problem with the whole idea that everything's good for me, and end of story.
Well, you know, I would just add, that is the antithesis of patriotism. I think so many people really misunderstand what patriotism is. Like, it's this, you know, I'm going to wave a flag, I'm going to put a bumper sticker on, I'm going to say I support the troops. But that patriotism is so much more than that. If you support the troops, but you don't support the VA hospital having a good budget, that's empty. You know, if you say that you support the troops, you know, and have a flag waving from your house, but you don't vote for folks who care about their mental health, then that's empty. If you're waving a flag, but you aren't concerned about the lack of justice for people who don't look like you, believe like you, then that's empty, right? That we need to get back to a kind of Frederick Douglass patriotism, a patriotism that says, I'm going to point out every time my country falls short, not because I love pointing out every time my country falls short, but I care enough about our impossible ideals to keep pushing for it. That patriotism is not about looking back, but about looking forward. And that our greatness is in striving for our ridiculous, kind of out of this world ideals. We have a country that came into being saying that we're going to have freedom, equality for everybody, that we're not going to judge you by your name or who your family is, but by your own talents, that we're going to say that you have a right to pursue happiness. That's never been true, and it's never going to be true, but our greatness is in striving for that and caring about that for people who don't look like us, who haven't had the same experience as us. Right? I get so frustrated when I see this kind of lazy, capital, you know, lowercase p patriotism that is just about waving a flag and a bumper sticker. And it's not really about caring about your community and your nation and who has access to freedom, who has access to justice, who is lacking in liberty, and what can we do to extend it?
Because a lot of times that patriotism is linked to the supremacy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So we're going to continue. Wow, that was great. It went over 4 minutes, but it was worth it. So we're going to continue. Mr. Jeschke, this question is for you. What do you hope America does in response to this powerful film? And how do you envision it being used?
You know, I hope it can be used as I guess Alex has alluded to, as a teaching tool, as an example of what America's history is. You know, and to Dr. Clark-Pujara's thoughts about patriotism, that is what it comes down to. I mean, are we really to the year 2020 and this thing is all still coming down to skin color? Are we? How do we consider ourselves an advanced society when we're still on that basic remedial level of reaction and connection with each other? again, we're better than that. And I know it takes a lot of hard work, and it takes the right people listening and then acting. But hopefully documentaries like this and other actions by other people will be the small building blocks, maybe to help create a foundation from which something can actually change. Again, I'm starting to sound like some of the folks I interviewed for a documentary on systemic racism and inequalities 5 years ago, in that, yeah, I've heard it all before. When are we going to see something happen? And that's what I was told 5 years ago when I was putting together the documentary, that it was old news then. And it was. It is now. And I guess what needs to be new is the way people are taking it in, and what they do with the information. There's more to it than just a few people are being treated poorly. I really hope people are able to digest the fact that this is a lot bigger than a few people being treated poorly.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. We have one last question. We're going to wrap it up. I'd like to ask Dr. G and Mr. Harkins, what's next for your families?
You know, there's talk among, it's so interesting now. I feel like listening to my father talk about his father. There's been talk of the Black and the white G's having a reunion somewhere, because I've been sharing the information about this journey, because it was an audio, I mean, it was a podcast a few years ago, but people didn't get to see us really interacting. And so I'd like to plan that, or be a part of planning that. I think that that's something that could be very powerful. But I think John's nephew, he has a nephew named Brandon, and he's a pastor in Southern California. And I said, Brandon, you know, it's been great to meet my white relatives, but we're both pastors, and we have something that we need to say to the community of faith who's convinced that either this didn't happen or it's not worthy of our voices. And so we have something to say. So I think coming together and to remind ourselves that we are the product of America and American history is very powerful. But I also think there's a space for us to speak together about this injustice. I mean, John, his nephew, Brandon, they didn't think for their entire lives that they were descendants of slave owners. And all of a sudden, boom, you sort of have this guess who's coming to dinner kind of moment. And I didn't inform them of that. John's friend who's writing that book helped him to understand that. But I feel for me, the next part is to help to continue to hold up our family story as a microcosm, and to say, let's talk about it. You know, I agree with Mr. Jeschke that in 2020, this is still what we're talking about. But you know what? Skin color makes money. So it's not even a matter of intelligence. Skin color makes money, whether it's mass incarceration, special education, we can go on down the road. And we have to be able to talk about that by people who epitomize that reality in those systems. This isn't the history book. This is my flesh and blood. You know, John and I are both G's, but we found out that his great-grandfather was married to I believe Beulah Wilder, and my great-grandfather was born to Lilla Wilder. And so, like, we're double cousins, which means we've got a big story. We want to help to wake America up, that unless we acknowledge this and begin to address it by undoing the systems we have built, our children will have this bequeathed to them, and they deserve better than this. And so my hope is that we would shut this down by lifting up what this really means, and then letting the smart people who run these organizations and systems that control money, ask them, what money are you putting together to address this and fix this? I want foundations to answer that. I want municipalities. I want universities. I don't want just these empty statements saying we stand against racism and then go right onto racist acts or insensitive acts. I want these folks to show their plans to raise money, put money into Black-led organizations, and put money into training their folks. I want to see systemic change, because I just can't keep having head exercises and white papers. We got to change this, because I don't want my daughter, my grandchildren to have to live through this another generation.
Wow. Mr. Harkins? You're muted, sir.
John, you might have to unmute yourself again on your computer. John, there's just a button that just said that you can unmute yourself. And if not, we may not have time to get to that because we have gone over a little bit. Technology worked for most of the call with John.
That's okay. While we wait for Mr. Harkins, if we're able to get unmuted, I just wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this documentary. I think so many people read the Bible and use the Bible as a tool to maintain their supremacy thoughts, or use the Bible as a book of hope. But in the Bible, it says the greatest of these is love. And we cannot love thy neighbor as we love ourselves as a country if we don't truly get to know ourselves. And this documentary is helping us to get to know ourselves so that we can truly love one another. That's what we need now, to learn these things about our country. Learn what Dr. G is doing, and learn what Dr. Clark-Pujara is telling us about, and really know the truth about our history so that we can move forward with this knowledge and love fully. So we're going to turn it back over to Dr. G to take us out. Thank you again, Dr. G. And of course, if you could see everyone here, they would be applauding and thanking you for this opportunity and for using your life and your story to be such a blessing, and also to help impact the world in this way.
Oh, Ms. Robinson, thank you so much. And we give you a hand. You did an excellent job of moderating. We really appreciate it. And Ms. Robinson, I just want to note, everyone on this panel has been on my Black Like Me podcast, except for you. So I would love to talk with you and your team about getting you on Black Like Me. I know that wasn't unfair to get you on a spot like that, but I figured—
You got me anytime, you know.
Yes,
that.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I know that.
Yeah.
So listen, I just want to say thank you. This evening has been sponsored by Justified Anger, the initiative of Nehemiah that looks at uniting. You can see it right there, but our work of Justified Anger, but also my Black Like Me podcast. It's given me a voice and a place to talk about my feeling about being a part of this country and the reality of what this means. And again, what I said earlier was, I'm not short stopping, as my mom would say. She probably would say things like bird turning. I think that's not swearing. I think I can say that. However, I often ask myself, and I said this earlier, who would my Black peers be if we didn't have the issues of the last 400 years? And in light of all of that, you still have the Christy Clark-Pujaras and the Alex G's and the others. And so it just shows the ilk of individuals from whom we come. And if these unnecessary barriers are removed, we have the intellect, the fortitude, and the ability to lift this country. We built it. We can lift it if we remove the barriers. I want to say thank you to my friend Greg Jeschke, who heard my heart about wanting to tell this story, and then who believed it, because I knew that it was important to me, but he helped me to believe that it was important to the nation and it needed to be told. When he created his company to do documentaries, he told me that this was the very first documentary that he was doing. And I'm very, very proud. I appreciate his talent and his storytelling ability, and for allowing his first project where he would not be the narrator to be me and my voice. And every time I look at it, I think I don't remember saying that, but it brings chills to me that those things were being said. If you want to follow Justified Anger, am I doing my slides right? There we go. There are a number of ways that you can do that on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you want to follow Black Like Me, you can actually go to iTunes Store, any of the platforms, Siri, even your Google Assistant. If you tell it to find Black Like Me podcast, will do it. But follow us on social media. While I'm right here, let me just say this before I go any further. Dr. Christy Clark-Pujara, we had two people say Dr. Christy Clark-Pujara for president. So I want you to know that you might be a write-in in 20. Yeah, that's what you need: a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, a husband who's an entrepreneur, and and your book, and you need to do that. And also, people came in the room who said that they were descendants of Henderson. Keisha Harris and my cousin Maurice watching from Illinois. Thank you all so much. But again, I want to just say this. If you want to follow our work, please do this. Know that we're going to send these slides to you tomorrow. We can go to the next slide, Eli, so that you can know how to follow us. If you're asking, what do we do? We've opened all of this. What do we do? Allies and would-be allies do 3 things. They educate, they donate, and they affiliate. They educate themselves. This movie was one part of it. We're going to send you the link to Greg's website so that you can watch it again and share with other folks. But donate. Resource the struggle. Don't just say, I want to get involved some way that gets my heart connected. That's very important, but we still need to support the work that's going on and give to Black-led organizations and efforts, because we're on the ground and we know what these issues are. And affiliate, follow, support, volunteer, get connected to these organizations. Don't just watch them from the distance. Couple of next steps. We're going to send this out to you as well. We have dates set right here for educational opportunities. And please mark these dates on your calendar. Mark them on your calendar. And this will bring in people from our community to talk about their experiences being Black in our community or in the nation. Drum roll, please. This is another special offering. The next slide is our own Dr. Christy Clark-Pujara has agreed to do a special Black History course lecture. Listen, we have taken 1,000 folks, non-Black folks, through the U.S. Black History course, 1,000. Our attendance rate or completion rate is right at 86%. Friends around the nation who have watched have said, you got to take that online. I've been in Zoom chats with people in Zimbabwe, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and all across the US, and Mexico City, who have said we want that information. And so this one course is going to just whet your appetite, because Justified Anger is working to put our courses on US Black history and eradicating systemic racism online. So we want you to know that we're moving into that place. We're owning that space. We're gonna need a lot of support and resources to do that, but we don't even know if we can get the 300 people in our facility where we normally teach it. So we're going to put it online. So we have a date, July 27th at 7 p.m. Mark your calendar. This will also be in your email tomorrow. Mark it, because we will use a large platform and we can take up to 3,000 people for that class. You want to mark that. And then just a special thank you also to J-Dog Productions, to the Human Family Unity Foundation, founder of whom stood up in the crowd and told me, go to Mississippi, meet your relatives, and here we are. Generator, who so graciously let us use their platform. They're working so feverishly in the background, and our own Angela Robinson. We know that it's an hour ahead of us and that you have a young child and you still have spent time with us.
That's okay. I do want to say one thing, Dr. G.
Yes, Eli, we can take this sign down until she says that, and then we'll put it back up. We'll put the contact Justified Anger back up, but let's just take this down so we can see her.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to say, many of you ask questions in the question and answer section. Your questions will be taken, they will be logged, and the answers will be hopefully emailed or returned to you in some way, but they'll be given to everyone on the panel. So your questions have not gone unnoticed, just so you know that. Thank
you for that, Ms. Robinson. And as much as I'm able to, I like to work with my video team to see if I could do rapid fire responses to some of these so we can get as many of them out to you, because these questions are important. So keep in mind, we have some next steps coming up, and we have a U.S. Black History course that's coming up. And if you want to follow us and know what's going on, please take a look at your emails tomorrow. We have a tab on our website on nehemiah.org that says Join the Struggle, and you can find what movies to watch. We have study guides. We want to empower our non-Black allies to join the struggle by knowing what's going on. So again, I think that is everything. Everyone who believed that this could happen, everyone who showed up, thank you. And just one last thing, if we could just use the hashtag #JustifiedJourney, and if you had a good experience, you learned something, you heard a quote, would you please tweet it out or just put it out on your social platform? Let's just make that trend. Justified Journey, let's put that in people's mind, because I want people to support this movie and Greg and his team, because it's phenomenal. So again, hashtag Justified Journey. We'll put this in the email, but just whatever thought you had, put it out there. Thank you all so much for being a part of this evening. We went a few minutes over, but I'm sure you feel like I do, that it was really, really worth it. And last thing, special thanks to my sister Laleda and to my daughter Lexi and to my colleague Tyler, who caught some of the early footage, audio, and photos to make me believe that this could eventually become a documentary. Thank you all, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Alex. Good night.
Sure, good night.